justice and recompense. This is another scandal, David. Maybe a lot of people aren't aware of it. It's starting to bubble up to the surface again, much like the post office scandal. A lot of people lost a lot of money off of the back of this football index shenanigans. Tell us a little bit about that and how you came to be sucked into it or involved in it yourself.
Thanks, Rick. Yeah, so it's something that's been going on for 3 years now since the platform collapsed. So what Football Index was an online trading platform licensed and regulated by the Gambling Commission, which launched in October 2015. It gave users the ability to, I'll call them bets, but we'll get to that in a stage, to bet on the performance of footballers, initially just in the media, so they were, media-savvy footballers. David Beckham would have been a great example of someone who was always in the media, Harry Kane, England captain, etc. And then as the product evolved and more people got interested in it, it allowed people to actually get rewarded for players' on-field performance as well. The platform grew very quickly, and I actually joined it in 2018. It was marketed very aggressively, so John Motson, famous BBC commentator, was the voice behind it, which attracted me. Unfortunately, the product, I called it a bet. So how it worked was you had a 3-year term for the players that you bought into. So you didn't own a share of a player. There was nothing tangible behind it. It was strictly, they took money in, and then the winnings, a bit like a traditional bookmaker, would be funded from that. But it was unique, or certainly novel at the time, because normally gambling or betting is a one-time transaction. You bet on Grand National last week. If a horse wins, you win. If it fell at the first, you lose your entire stake. Because of the ability to earn dividends, as they were called, winnings over a 3-year term, and you could win every day if your footballer was amazing, actually that would fall under the premise of the FCA. It's a financial services product, even though you're betting on football. So the FCA regulate things like climate and commodities, so it doesn't have to be a bank account or an ISA or a pension. But people did have the misconception they were investing in something that had protection. So a bit like your bank account, a bit like your ISA, a bit like your pension, in the unlikely event of the product provider, the operator, collapsing, you were protected by the Financial Services Compensation Scheme. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, behind the scenes, what Football Index were doing were taking everyone's bets and aggressively spending it on marketing, promotion. So they were a household name to a lot of people. They advertised on the front of championship football shirts. They were very aggressive in their marketing around perimeter advertising, and very aggressive in terms of promoting it on social media. Unfortunately, what they didn't do was provide enough cash to meet their obligations, i.e. these 3-year terms. And by March 2021, despite the operator assuring what were now starting to be concerned customers of the operator that they'd never been in a stronger financial position, they actually effectively ran out of money in March 2021, and they're now in liquidation with, we're talking about pence in the pound, maybe 2, 3, 4 pence in the pound to be returned to creditors, which are mostly consumers like myself. Hopefully that gives a very brief explanation of what is quite a complicated case, but have you got any questions, or have I explained it correctly so far?
Yeah, that's great, because I think it's one of these things, David. It's important to highlight what's going on here, because it's like the post office scandal that happened. Well, it didn't happen recently. It was happening for a very, very long period of time, and a lot of people were absolutely stitched up through alleged accounting errors. Some people lost their businesses, their jobs, their health suffered. They died as a result of it. There's a lot of people that got embroiled in this football index business. And actually, you mentioned there as well, I did a little bit of research into this last night. I wasn't familiar with it to the extent that you are, but I think the Notts Forest at one stage had Football Index on the front of their jerseys. You talked about John Motson was the voice of this, and although it wasn't an investment type product, it was pretty aggressively marketed as an investment type product. But in reality, it was a gambling product. But a lot of people bought into it off the back of, for example, trusted people in the footballing industry that they would have listened to, like Motson, or followed football teams like Nottingham Forest, for example, and maybe didn't dig very deep when it came to finding out the minutiae of how this was actually set up. And now, unfortunately, a lot of people are left with 5 and 6 figure losses off of the back of this.
That's right. I mean, the terminology and the terms and conditions that the Gambling Commission were aware of at the time of licensing was very financial services orientated. So consumers were called traders. Your accumulation of bets was called a portfolio. There was dividends were winning. So very much, the terminology you would attach to financial services product and traditional stocks and shares. So £124.5 million was the amount that was outstanding in open bets, contractual positions at the time of collapse. So that money was spent, and effectively there was, I think, less than £10 million left at the demise of the platform. It hasn't been recoverable, so the platform is not able to be relaunched in any form, and as I said, the liquidation is ongoing. It's been ongoing now for best part of 3 years, and a minimal amount will be returned. Now, my argument is that this product should never be regulated by the Gambling Commission and given a license because of the fact that it was so unique and so novel that they should have been referred back to the FCA. Now, rather than holding their hands up at the time of collapse and saying, you know what, we've made a mistake, let's put people back into the position they would have been if this mistake hadn't happened, i.e. the index had never been launched, the Gambling Commission have basically just tried to bury the information. They try to blame consumers for gambling too much. They have not been transparent and honest and open in terms of meetings that Football Index Action Group have had with the CEO, Andrew Rhodes, and in answers to me. And the worst thing about this was this was a shock and a surprise to consumers, but the Gambling Commission had actually been investigating Football Index behind the scenes for nearly 2 years because they had growing concerns about not just what they had licensed, i.e. it was a financial services product, but also the aggressive marketing, the terminology used, the unfair terms and conditions, and the lack of transparency around the odds and the pricing, etc. So the Gambling Commission were actively investigating Football Index even until the day it collapsed in March 2021, but they were also in regular and frequent contact with the FCA, who until even the day it collapsed, the FCA was still saying, yes, we should be regulating this product in some form, whether that's in its entirety or jointly with the Gambling Commission. And there are precedents for this. So if you are a sporting spread bet consumer, you would potentially have the protection of the FCA for gambles or positions that you take on in terms of spread bets because of the high risk nature. Football Index was very similar to that. It was a high risk product that was marketed as a safe and secure, almost like a bank account for your savings, and that wasn't the case. So what the Gambling Commission should have done when they became aware of this was, well, this isn't what we understood we licensed. We need to suspend this to protect as much consumers' money as possible. What they actually did was allow the operator to continue, and I would estimate in the nearly 2 years that they were investigating, possibly an additional £50 million was actually deposited by unsuspecting consumers.
So this was allowed to continue even though there was huge red flags over the top of it. We've got to take a little headline break right now, David. When we come back at the other side, I want to look at what the options are going forward for the people that are obviously out all this money. And also it's worth noting here as well that there's a story you posted up, and you have a social media group, a group action at FI_action on Twitter X, that the Football Index co-founder Adam Cole is behind a strikingly similar new football crypto trading website. So the people that were behind this are still very much in operation in the UK at the minute. Maybe a little word of warning out there for anybody that maybe wants to delve into that one as well. So we'll do that when we come back after the short headline break here on TNT with today's talk.
Look forward to
Football Index scandal, which we've been talking about during the first part of this conversation this morning in their fight for justice and recompense. So it looks pretty grim from what you've told me. 140 odd million outstanding. There was 10 million quid left over at the end. Notoriously, when these sort of things go pear-shaped, it can be very, very difficult indeed to get recompense from the people that are guilty of perpetrating allegedly these crimes. So some people like to think, well, there should be a fallback here on the financial services scheme, but they don't regulate this. So the Gambling Commission as well. Is there any type or any kind of prospect of getting redress from them? Because I would say the chances of getting it back off the founders of Football Index would be pretty slim, David, or am I being pessimistic there?
No, you're right to be pessimistic. I don't think we'll see anything substantial out of the founders. I don't believe any funds were embezzled by them. I think it was just badly managed and they had no financial control and they just spent the money expecting the product to continue to grow, people like myself to continue to deposit, or new customers in the UK, and they kept promising international expansion. So, no, is the straightforward answer to that one. The Gambling Commission has no protection. So once your bet is placed out of your online wallet, for example, it's deemed as funds at risk and there's no scheme there. The FCA is different. There is the Financial Services Compensation Scheme that I mentioned, which is protection up to £85,000, which would protect the vast majority of Football Index consumers. There would be some who had, like myself, more than that in the platform. So my argument has been, why should the taxpayer pick up the bill for this? Because it's not the taxpayer's fault at the end of the day. It's government's job to regulate, and I quote a Scottish MP, Ronnie Cowan, in that basis, and they delegate responsibility to the regulators. Now, the regulators don't cost the taxpayer any money. Okay, they're funded from licence fees and application fees from either betting companies or financial services companies. And I put the blame on both regulators, the FCA and the Gambling Commission combined. They are actually a net contributor to the Treasury. So when banks and financial services companies misbehave, they are fined. And they're fined large sums. I think HSBC, NatWest, off the top of my head, have been fined hundreds of millions of pounds in the last few years since Football Index was formed. So I haven't had the chance to look at the figures, but when I spoke to Sonia Bolton back in January on this channel, something like 1.2 billion has gone into the Treasury from fines and settlements. So when the FCA and the Gambling Commission do a good job and crack down on uncompliant companies, the taxpayer benefits. It's therefore only fair that when the Gambling Commission and or the FCA make a mistake, which leads to a loss of money from hard-working UK taxpayers, we all were in terms of the consumer base of Football Index, it's only fair there should be the ability for a redress scheme to be funded from those sources. So, yeah, £124.5 million was the sum outstanding in March 2021. I did a quick calculation this morning, actually, because obviously inflation will have eaten into the purchasing power of that. So it would now be, if we were to be fully redressed and our purchasing power kept up to speed with, obviously the high inflation rates over the last 3 years, it'll be 160 million. I think it's still good value for taxpayers, and I think would set a precedent for future that consumers can go into either a gambling company or a financial services company and know that the regulator is cracking down on unscrupulous operators. That's their job. That's what they're supposed to do. But rather than protecting consumers, rather than holding their hands up and admitting to mistakes, what they've actually done is blame consumers and hide the truth.
Yeah, it seems to be the way of it. Like I said, David, hopefully maybe there's other people listening in here this morning that haven't been in contact with you yet, that aren't aware of what the procedures are in this case. I would direct them your way because we're out of time in this one as per now. So hopefully that's shed a little bit of light in this case for people that aren't aware of it, or maybe somebody could be listening in that maybe will be able to connect with you now and get some advice and steering from you. Of course, people that are going through this as well. So if you haven't done so, and if you use the X X or Twitter platform in particular, you can check out the Football Index group action page at FI_action. So that's coordinating the victims of the FI scandal in the fight for justice and redress. So please go on there. And also, I believe you have a page on there yourself. Your own personal page is at ZIDave1, ZIDave1 as well. So you can contact Dave directly or through the group on there if you're affected by this. And just for anybody out there, benefit, the hindsight's great. We've all made mistakes in the past that looking back, we should have maybe paid a little bit more attention to. I'm not saying that you guys, didn't pay attention to what was going on, but some people take a lot of things at face value. I used to work in financial services, and very much people bought, I was in a large multinational bank, doing financial planning. So customers tend to look at you and take what you say, and you could say, well, you need to make sure you read all the fine print, but many people don't do that. That's why they like a Motson, for example, or the sponsorship with Notts Forest could have maybe got a lot of people sucked into this. It's easy saying that with the benefit of the hindsight, but for anybody else out there, just take extra special care at this time, no matter what you're doing, because there's a lot of ways to be parted from your money at this point in time. So
sadly, yes.
Sad but true, Dave.
Sadly, yes.
So I appreciate you coming on this morning and giving us an update on that, and hopefully you can reach out to Dave if needs be, if you're in that position yourself. So big thanks to you. Got to take a break right now, and you're welcome. Welcome Trevor John on after this short break here on TNT, today's News Talk.
While serving in Vietnam, a grenade took